It all kicks off when a super important document gets stamped on the desk, officially sealing the engagement with the majestic Grand Duke Valdrova. The guy sitting at the desk stares at the kid with a dead serious look, asking if he actually grasps the dark, twisted reality of this deal. Then he rubs it in by calling the kid by his full name, Ferda Resnova, making it crystal clear that there is zero way out of this gig. Getting a memo like that was basically like being handed an absolute doom sentence for anyone in the aristocracy. At this point, fate only handed out two options. Option 1 was tossing the deal in the trash and ending up exiled from the family with absolutely nothing. Option 2 was saying I do and facing a fatal end in the jaws of the beast, but our MC's take on this was a whole different vibe. Deep down, Ferda just wanted to find a way to prove he was not a total scrub and finally fit in with that family. Even though he was gasping for air and sweating buckets from pure exhaustion, he kept grinding. As the third son of a knightly bloodline born to a concubine and cursed with terrible health, he kept training in the courtyard while the stuck-up nobles watched and roasted him for zero progress. Watching a guy with zero natural talent fighting his own limits was top-tier gossip material for them, but he just swallowed the bitter pill of loneliness since he had zero backup. Swinging his heavy wooden sword like his life depended on it, he tried to gaslight himself into believing that the grind would actually pay off eventually. Watching from the window, the head of the family totally gave his useless effort a side-eye with a low-key, soulless smirk. Still coping hard that he would get their stamp of approval one day, the kid keeps a hopeful sparkle in his eye when he catches wind of a weird rumor going around. Suddenly, his older brother pulls up with a real steel blade and totally clowns on his hustle, saying with pure disgust that he was making a massive fool of himself. Dropped to the floor against the wall with his weapon busted, Ferda gets hit with the harsh reality check that he never had the right stats to belong there. The bullying gets way too personal when the jerk looks straight into the kid's blue eyes and calls them filthy. Left in the dust and crying his eyes out, the kid feels the heavy emotional damage of realizing his only dream was just to be accepted by these toxic people. While this whole humiliation session goes down outside, his dad literally just turns his back to the window, completely ghosting the situation. Down on his knees in a dimly lit room, the boy finally gets the memo that this household stopped giving a single rip about him a long time ago. Faced with getting permanently blocked by his family, he stands up and confidently drops the mic, saying he is out of there. Showing absolutely zero emotion or pushback, the gray-haired boomer gives a cold, hard nod to his departure. Lugging just a few things on his back, Ferda marches straight for the massive iron gates of the mansion. The final ruling officially cuts the cord, making it law that from that second on, he does not get to flex the fancy Resnova last name anymore. Staring down at his calloused hands, the guy feels the ultimate rage of seeing all his blood, sweat, and tears treated like absolute garbage by the very people supposed to have his back. Taken over by a massive wave of rage and giving off some seriously heavy vibes, he swears to himself that he is never, ever forgiving the ones who did him dirty. While he is out here promising to make his old family deeply regret throwing him away, a ring of pure energy starts popping off around him. Walking away from the city under the pitch-black sky, this moment was the undeniable launchpad of his magical career. At 18 years old, he flexed his magic talents, diving headfirst into learning spells and formations like a total nerd. Since he joined the server way later than the other trainees, people seriously doubted if his brain could even process the tutorials. His classmates never missed a chance to troll him, claiming his potato brain would take decades to download even the most basic concepts. With all the students knocked out cold around him after the brawl, he realizes a wizard's true flex comes from inner strength, totally rolling his eyes at them, panicking over his insane energy. Whipping up a concentrated orb in his hands, Ferda proves that his knack for controlling magic circles is 100% fueled by pure, unadulterated spite. The whole place gets completely wrecked by a massive blast, showing just how much destructive power his sheer willpower packs. Casually strolling down the hallway littered with knocked-out haters, he notices his ruthlessness levels up right alongside his beef with someone. After stacking up years of craving payback and hitting the 6th magic circle, he only had one specific destination left on his radar. With the family's gigantic mansion literally going up in flames in the night, he used his clout to mind control the staff who treated him like trash into an all-out battle royale against each other. With zero chills left to give, the sorcerer completely muted the desperate cries of those snobby nobles who used to beg for mercy. His two older brothers did not dodge the ban hammer either, getting mind-hacked into having a fatally toxic beef with each other. The forced match dragged on until both of them dropped from exhaustion, leaving only the big boss patriarch who started all this drama in the first place. Gripping his dad's face hard, the MC forces him to keep his eyes wide open to watch his pride and joy turn to ash, all while listening to him beg to just hit the game over screen already. The old man was forced to watch his own personal nightmare unfold in his house, ending up with his soul completely shattered by the disaster. In this brutal fashion, every single trace of that family's clout and VIP status got wiped from the server permanently. Even after finishing his main quest, the kid realizes from his empty stare that this hype was not enough to actually chill him out. His rage kept bubbling over and spread across the whole continent, forcing a bunch of top-tier warriors to team up just to try and hit pause on his rampage. Cornered on the edge of a cliff, he listens to the paladins claim they are about to drop the final judgment on him for causing so much unprovoked chaos. Surviving yet another broken boss fight, the MC clapped the fighters and broke through every limit, unlocking the 8th circle. Because of this wildly overpowered achievement, his name went down in the history books as an absolute god-tier archmage. But honestly, he totally knew people were still holding grudges and would definitely try to spin the block on him later, just hitting refresh on the cycle of hate. Surrounded by dusty old books and scrolls, Ferda figures out he needs absolute, undisputed cheat code power to reach the god-tier level of the 9th circle. Digging through a sketchy private spellbook, he finally hits the page that drops the final crafting material needed to rank up. The drawing of a dagger over the beast makes him look up and ask the universe if this was just some sick, twisted prank by fate. The recipe literally called for the heart of the terrifying Grand Duchess Feldrova, the red dragon from his old busted contract. Lit up by a massive moon over a mountain backdrop, the irony of this plot twist was wildly uncomfortable. The gigantic monster was already laid out on the ground, super bruised up, marking a seriously messy reunion for the dude. Standing right in front of the massive beast, he stares down the one who, back in the day, was supposed to be his player too. Shifting into a human form while running on zero energy from the fight, the boss lady struggles with the heavy damage she took. Not dropping his edgy vibe, the mage warns her that the smartest move would be to just log out quietly, calling her a total tyrant. Gasping for air and slurring her words, the creature admits that is how the world sees her, but she desperately wants to know why everyone is so incredibly toxic to her. The beast explains she spent her whole life hiding in isolation, never even stepping on human turf, completely baffled by what massive beef could justify all this hostility. Hit with a sudden spike of rage, Ferda snaps when he hears her claim she never ruined anyone's life. Venting years of pure salt, he blames the monster for being the root of all his bad luck, since her weird demand for a fiancé is what got him kicked out of his house. The giant dragon looks genuinely shook, asking if the blame for all that drama really falls on her, only to get yelled at in response. Totally losing his cool, the archmage screams that her weird animalistic dream of having a human partner completely bricked his life. With a subtle twitch of her sharp nails, the creature shows she is finally connecting the dots and understanding the lore behind his grudge. Confused by his opponent actually stopping to think, Ferda glitches for a split second, feeling suspicious about the sudden vibe chain. Right after, he brushes off the weirdness and focuses on the red aura charging up around him, using the pause to stack his buffs. Just as he is charging up his ultimate finisher, he gets jump-scared by the beast's majestic voice saying it all made sense now. Super fast and out of nowhere, the dragon literally sinks her own claws deep into her own chest. Freaked out by this wild plot twist, the MC scrambles to cast his spell while letting out a stressed-out yell. The shock completely freezes his face when he sees a massive amount of vitality draining straight from his opponent. The self-inflicted critical hit leaves the mythical boss basically at the brink of entirely passing away, bleeding out heavily under the night sky. Completely stun-locked by this illogical play, he yells out asking what the actual point of throwing the game like that was. The creature's weak voice echoes, reminding the wizard that his spell specifically needed an intact dragon core. Going into full panic mode, the guy screams his lungs out telling her to stop, realizing she was ruining her own heart just to sabotage his. Sprinting like a madman toward the target, Ferda tries to cancel the disaster however he can, knowing there is zero chance he gets another drop like this to hit the 9th circle. Consumed by total road rage, Ferda aggressively reaches out and warns her there is no way he is letting her delete his loot. But the brutal hit lands dead center on the creature's chest, releasing a super heavy spike of energy into the area. Without blinking, the sorcerer dashes to the monster while cursing her for making such a reckless, impulsive play. He lands crazy fast next to the huge body that is now starting to glitch out from the damage. Desperately searching for the core, the kid goes into shock when his eyes lock onto something, straight up refusing to believe his screen. Seeing the boss lady flat out and unresponsive, he mutters that this is absolute madness and wonders where the heck the main quest item went. Right then, his eyes freeze when he spots a totally impossible anomaly in the middle of all that chaos. The creature's heart is sitting perfectly fine and glowing in his hands, shining with a crazy bright gold aura. Completely mind blown by the whole setup, He stares at the item trying to decode why she did that. Ferda admits he cannot figure Valdrova out at all, because if she actually wanted to fight for real, she would have sent him to the lobby ages ago. With a failing voice, the creature says she did it because her existence made his life miserable, which leaves the kid totally stunned. The beast then spills the truth that she actually hated herself with a passion for a really long time. She says she always despised her monster DNA and the random, uncontrollable urge to just cause absolute chaos for zero reason. That toxic trait was a part of her coding that seemed totally impossible to hold back or patch out. The heavy toll of solo carrying that nightmare is super obvious in the exhausted eyes of the massive red dragon. Flashbacks show the boss walking through burning streets, while people scattered in absolute terror to avoid meeting their maker. Knowing just her entering the chat caused massive panic, she admits there were plenty of times she just wanted to disappear so everyone's problems would vanish. Despite carrying all that baggage, the beast actually had the nerve to want a little slice of happiness, but admits that naive delusion just spawned more misery. Bit by bit, the creature's life force is irreversibly hitting zero. Accepting her fate, Valdrova says that since everyone had a bad time because of her, she hopes her dropping this loot at least gives the wizard the joy he is looking for. Then the dragon's massive character model starts dusting away into the wind. Eyes wide open, the MC feels a weird tightness in his chest and tries to figure out what this awful feeling is. The bad vibes just keep scaling up, making him grip his own shirt, totally stressed out by the internal turmoil. Grinding his teeth in pure rage, he trash talks his enemy for trying to mess with his willpower right at the final checkpoint. Trying to shake off the doubt, the guy turns his back on the beast's ashes and locks in on his main objective, reminding himself that the ninth circle is basically fully loaded. Holding the glowing heart way up, Ferda gets ready to consume the pure essence of a boss that has been around since ancient times. Watching the gold energy stack up, he claims that the second he equips this, he is going to completely break the human level cap. He lets out a scream as the massive buff forcefully downloads straight into his system. The channeled energy is so insanely broken he swears it is going to respawn him with stats rivaling a literal god. A massive flash of light clears the zone, proving the Archmage just leveled up to a tier nobody has ever seen. But instead of the victory screen, the kid's consciousness gets thrown into a totally dark, empty void, leaving him completely lost in the sauce. The wizard's avatar floats there glowing while he asks what part of the code broke, since he was 100% sure he consumed the core without dropping any frames. Then he gets the sick feeling of falling through the map into an endless void, and wonders if this is just a visual effect of the leveling process. A massively heavy depression starts hijacking his brain in a super deep and creepy way. With his eyes popping out, Ferda finally gets it. All these heavy vibes were actually Valdrova's safety. Total shock takes over his face when he realizes he just unlocked full access to everything the boss lady kept hidden in her heart. He literally feels a panic way older and heavier than his own, plus a loneliness that still managed to wrap around the whole world. Faced with this massive dump of raw feelings, all the salt and toxic rage he threw at the creature suddenly feels completely pointless. Tears stream down the MC's face as he realizes he is just a low-level nobody, reflecting hard on the brutal move he just pulled. Diving into his own archives, he starts questioning what he was actually trying to achieve with this sweaty grind for power. A flashback to his time in isolation reading a book by the window brings up the truth he was trying to hide from himself. He realizes he never actually gave a single rip about the Archmage title or collecting absolute power. His childhood doodle of a bunch of people holding hands proved his only real dream since he was little was something super basic. Ferda just wanted to join a real family and chill, far away from the cruelty he had to live with at home. Looking at the memory of the beast in human form just soaking up the sun, the kid realizes with heavy regret that they both literally had the exact same aspiration. With a sad smile on his dirty face, the MC sighs and cries over how this entire playthrough was just a colossal waste of time. Standing frozen near the creature's dropped loot, he beats himself up for deleting the only user who would have actually understood him, realizing it is totally useless to figure out the truth this late in the game. The tears keep flowing while the heavy burden of guilt completely shreds any hype he thought he would feel for winning. However, by unlocking the 9th magic circle, a super rare supreme spell becomes available to cast. Glowing with a massive, shiny magic aura, the kid figures that all this broken power is completely worthless if he is just going to play solo forever. Out of nowhere, the screen flashes and the kid's eyes snap open when he hears someone shouting his name. The map around him totally changes, spawning him into a fancy, super decorated office. Sitting at the desk, the old guild leader yells at the kid for spacing out right in the middle of a crucial cutscene. Staring at the floor, Ferda gets super dizzy seeing his dad there, considering the old guy had passed away a really long time ago. It finally clicks when the familiar room and the awkward vibe prove that the day of that doomed engagement announcement was literally resetting. The snobby boomer asks if the kid understands the weight of this choice, keeping his usual toxic, bossy tone. Before the ban threat even drops, a sneaky little smirk pops up on the kid's face. Stepping up with pure confidence, he finally realizes the spell actually worked and fast-traveled him right back to his early days. Showing absolutely zero sweat, the kid looks the guy dead in the eyes and promises that this playthrough is going to have a totally different ending. With major main character energy, he completely stuns the patriarch by officially saying yes to marrying the boss lady without even blinking. The gossip spreads through the mansion's hallways like wildfire, leaving the staff completely shook by the kid's sudden glow-up in bravery. Hyukin, the second son, asks if the rumors are real, because he was fully expecting to see his little brother begging for his life, instead of jumping straight into the trap. The butler mentions the kid's departure is scheduled for super soon, but he kicked the maids out and decided to lock himself in his own room. Thinking the whole setup is hilarious and spicy, the toxic noble decides there is still time to go troll him one last time. He speedwalks down the halls with the obvious goal of mocking the terrified face of the future prisoner. Kicking the bedroom door wide open, Hyukin barges in screaming, demanding to know why the loading screen for the trip has not started yet. But the intruder's cocky smirk gets totally wiped when he sees the unexpected setup going on inside. Far from crying or throwing a tantrum like everyone thought, Furdo is just standing by the mirror, adjusting his premium outfits, looking completely unfazed. Keeping his cool, the MC roasts his brother's trash manners for busting in unannounced, leaving the guy totally stun-locked by his chill vibe. Fixing the final details on his fit, the kid drops that he purposely dismissed the servants so he could get used to the lack of luxury from here on out. Skeptical about this massive personality switch, Hyukin tries to get the high ground back by asking if the kid actually knows how insanely heavy this contract is. Keeping it completely real, the MC states that the deal is basically just a fancy excuse to permanently ban him from the bloodline. The relative gets totally flustered by the honesty and tries to bully him, saying the engagement is a one-way trip, asking if he knows the actual lore behind why the fiancé spot was open. Exhaling slowly, Furta closes his eyes and guarantees he is fully aware of all the patch notes surrounding this deal. The nightmare reality everyone was terrified of was that the very first guy set up with the boss was none other than the Empire's third prince. Famous for having brilliant intellect and massive popularity, this flawless prince actually gave up his spot for the throne just to volunteer as the boss lady's partner. But all that security got speedrun into the ground literally on day one after he arrived to make it official. Even though he tried to keep a polite, friendly vibe in front of the monster, the poor guy ended up catching massive hostility and got totally clapped without a single chance to defend himself. Flexing this tragic case, the older brother asks if the MC seriously thinks he is going to survive a situation that even top-tier royalty could not handle. Shrugging it off with peak disrespect, the noble jokes that it is not his problem if a total fool willingly walks straight into his own ruin. He even drops a hard warning that if the kid tries to escape, he will personally make sure to take him out before the beast even gets the chance. Not showing a single drop of panic at the threat, the kid just casually lectures his brother with total tranquility. The MC then drops the nuke that literally everyone already knows, how he has been creepily staring at the oldest brother's wife. Completely furious over the insult, Hyukin lunges to throw hands but gets a quick reality check that he needs to chill out. Staying frosty, the wizard reminds him that his face is an essential item for the pact right now, so it absolutely cannot get bruised. With his ride already waiting outside, he announces that the road trip to the monster's zone is going to be a long one and hits them with a goodbye. Chilling calmly in the carriage seat, the kid gets ready to permanently abandon the family estate. The boomer butler says his goodbyes faking respect, claiming it was a massive privilege serving the young master all these years. Spotting the fake behavior instantly, Furta figures that if it was really an honor, the employee would not have spent his entire life slipping poison into his food. He remembers growing up fully convinced his health was just naturally nerfed from birth. But the guy eventually figured out the betrayal and felt so disgusted he wanted to literally end the man with his bare hands. Completely shocking the crowd, the MC decides to pull the old lackey into a hug, faking a wholesome goodbye. The butler totally panics when he hears the kid sarcastically whisper that taking care of him for so long must not have been an easy task. Keeping up the troll act, the kid tells the employee to watch over the family and leaves in the vehicle, putting distance between him and that house. Flying solo in the back seat, Furta kicks back and realizes he is actually super chill, guessing it is because he already got his revenge in his past life. Staring at the view out the window, he notices his mind is completely serene. As the road trip cruises through the sunlit forest, he realizes all that fury and thirst for payback just straight up evaporated from his heart. The kid quietly reflects on how his situation hit this level of peace. In his memories, the magic he spammed back in the day operated like a wild exploit, which honestly felt amazing at first. But as time passed, that destructive power turned into a legit, highly toxic addiction. When the madness hijacked his body, the simple act of destroying stuff gave him a high that canceled out literally any other feeling. Bringing his focus back to the current moment, his eyes show a clarity that definitely was not there before. Exhaling a huge sigh of relief, the wizard privately admits he has zero desire to replay the nightmare of being consumed by resentment. Resting his head back, he decides that finally getting a moment of tranquility after a long period is honestly excellent. Finally arriving at the drop zone, the driver stutters an announcement, while the kid reflects that now he will not have to activate his magic anymore. A wooden signpost straight up screams a warning that entering the creature's territory is completely banned. Solo in the middle of the woods with just his few items, he sits down to wait, just listening to the ambient nature sounds. The driver bails in full panic mode, wishing the kid good health, and the kid thinks it is honestly a win to not be watched, though he does scan the jungle for threats. To avoid being completely vulnerable to bigger threats, the MC decides it might be smart to unlock at least a little bit of basic magic for self-defense. Suddenly, the rustling of leaves completely grabs the kid's attention. He snaps his head around, realizing he is officially not alone in this isolated region anymore. A girl rocking a maid outfit pops out from the bushes saying hey, introducing herself as Ruri, one of Valdrova's employees. The young girl politely asks if he is the awaited candidate, getting a chill, simple nod back. Acting super professional, the maid says she will act as his tour guide to the fortress and points out the path through the forest. On the walk, the guy remembers that the players in the Empire are completely delusional, thinking there is absolutely nothing their country cannot conquer. The reality was way different, since the eastern borders were always swarming with massive waves of beasts that were impossible to contain. But the one who actually solo defended against those fatal beast invasions back in the day was none other than the supposedly terrifying Red Boss herself. Following the guide, Ferda thinks it is super unfair the leader got such a cursed reputation, considering she was basically the continent's main firewall. He is thinking about how people just invent fake news about her spawning monster armies, when suddenly he spots a threat coming from behind. The beast that tried to attack them gets deleted instantly, while the kid thinks that the trolls trash-talking the monster would not dare type a single word to her face. Walking peacefully, the employee guarantees there is zero reason for the kid to stress over these random encounters. She explains that as long as he stays close, the weaker mobs will not have the guts to act stupidly, accepting his genuine thanks in return. Curious about the route, the MC asks what the estimated time of arrival is, and finds out the walking journey will still take about 2 hours. But the girl casually drops that if she flew there solo, it would literally take her 10 seconds to hit the castle. Doing the math, Ferdo immediately gets that she is definitely not just some basic ordinary maid. The girl is actually an heir to a mystical bloodline, hiding a tail and horns while flexing completely broken stamina. Faced with this new lore drop, the wizard decides to hit pause on walking and drops his luggage on the ground. He pitches the idea that they should just co-op fly to the base to save time, but the maid asks if she would have to literally carry him to do that. The guy promises he knows how to handle himself in the air and will not be dead weight, but she just shuts the whole chat down saying she straight up does not feel like it. Super awkward silence totally takes over the forest after that completely blunt, no-filter rejection. Trying to fix the weird vibe, the MC suggests at least hitting a quick rest stop, but the guide orders him to keep moving because the boss is waiting. With zero debate points against the girl's stubbornness, he stays quiet looking like his exhaustion is maxed out. The brutal hike drags on until the sun starts logging off behind the Rocky Mountains, proving that the route to marriage is never simple. Finally pulling up to the massive, edgy fortress, someone bashes the thick wooden door to announce their arrival. Standing right at the massive double doors, the maid announces loud and clear that the candidate finally made it. The kid feels a crazy heavy pressure leaking through the wood and wonders if just the existence of a dragon is really that traumatizing. The employee tells him not to pull any aggro and wait there while she fetches the message, but he asks if they could not just talk directly. A terrifying glare flashes in the dark, making it super clear that someone of his level does not have the slightest right to demand a face-to-face with the leader. After that stressful moment, the girl goes back to her polite act and says she will relay the exact words spoken by the creature. The message kicks off hyping up the kid's bravery for making the trip, even knowing the hardcore warnings about this region. But the official announcement totally swerves by stating she has absolutely zero interest in keeping up a forced arrangement. The final command tells the kid to turn back, leaving him super salty that he did the entire escort mission just to get kicked from the lobby right at the entrance. Staring at his own hand, the wizard thinks that in his previous save file, he would have smashed the accept button to escape this fate without a second thought. But running a totally different mindset nowadays, the MC loudly announces that his presence there is no longer a server order, it is his own player choice. The maid literally jumps at the kid's crazy disrespect when she hears he has zero plans to turn around and cancel the union. Met with the girl's stunned silence, Ferda demands she go right back and hand his appeal straight to the lady, earning a super reluctant nod. As a direct counter to his stubbornness, a massive loot bag full of coins gets aggressively thrown onto the floor. The maid details that his firm attitude was highly respected, but the ban order still stands, offering him a massive payout so he does not leave with nothing. The whole point was for him to blow the cash, starting a new life somewhere else, but the kid just stays glued to the floor, totally unfazed by the pile of gold. Staring at all that dropped premium currency, the wizard calmly drops the reality check that he could not care less about wealth or status. Casually flipping one of the coins, he makes his real endgame goal painfully obvious. The kid confidently claims that the only thing that actually has value to him is teaming up with leader Valdrova. Hearing this absolutely stubborn comeback, the young maid Ruri blanks for a second and lets out a massive sigh of exhaustion. In the blink of an eye, she dashes right at the MC with broken agility. Pointing her finger at his face like it is a lethal weapon, the girl orders him to log out of there right now without wasting another second. Analyzing this weird flex, Ferda notes that this feels way too concise to be a quote from the boss, and the maid confesses these words are purely her own. Totally taken over by nerves, the girl pops her razor-sharp claws and drops a heavy warning about what goes down if he refuses to leave. A crushing wave of energy explodes from the girl, hitting the zone with terrifying force. Thrown backward by the sheer power of the attack, the kid instantly recognizes it as the infamous dragon intimidation aura. The maid aggressively calls him out, claiming she knows exactly how greedy human players Arathi do not care about the boss, they just want the perks. Even while fighting for breath under that insane oppression, the MC finally connects the dots on why the third prince caught a fatal end back in the day. From the maid's point of view, that fancy noble's brain was packed with toxic strategies to exploit the beast and profit from the marriage. She adds that the guy was a total clown for thinking he could mask such obvious greed from their radar. Pushing hard against the crushing gravity, the wizard agrees that the royal was honestly way too full of himself. Cranking the pressure dial even higher, the girl promises she sees the kid having the exact same trash mentality as the other candidates. She asks if his master plan is really to try and scam the lady just to get the exact same miserable ending as the last guy. But instead of retreating in a panic, the kid just holds a completely chill expression and straightens out his outfit. The maid is fully mind-blown seeing that the mortal did not crash from her pressure and is actually still standing tall. Fixing his posture, the kid swears on his life he is not there because someone forced him, and he is definitely not looking to farm any personal buffs either. Painful flashbacks crash his system, pulling up the exact moment where the beast sacrificed her own run for a selfish player like him. Glowing with a warm, super determined aura, Ferda privately promises that this time around, he's going to stay by her side for real. Rocking a super serious face, he tells the maid to message the boss and say that from now on, they need to voice chat directly without any middlemen, since they are going to be a duo. The girl glares at the wizard with suppressed rage, tagging that kind of behavior as completely unbannable disrespect. Hitting absolute zero on her tolerance meter, she screams at his crazy audacity and rushes him with full aggression. The MC dodges the skill shot with insane agility, sliding smoothly out of the way. Keeping his polite vibe 100% intact, he just casually asks for a timeout while the girl tries to process that broken movement tech. Right after, the maid pops a transmission spell to perfectly playback the kid's exact voice lines about coming to claim the fiancé slot. Isolated in the spooky palace hallway, the maid finishes her report like a total professional. The message pings directly into the headset of the giant red dragon chilling in her base, the undisputed server admin of the region. Actually impressed by the notification, the beast, now rocking her human skin, asks if the kid seriously had the guts to drop that line. Lounging like absolute royalty, the boss admits she is super curious to run a background check and see what this guy is actually made of. Right then she asks for the maid's review, and the maid instantly trashes him as an insanely squishy mortal who looked like he was going to pass out from low stamina just walking there. Not even hiding the salt, the girl straight up lies that his character model is garbage and suggests they just kick him immediately. The boss instantly fact-checks the maid, pointing out the kid actually has pretty solid aesthetics, leaving the employee super salty that her fake news did not work. Taking the loss with a sigh, the younger maid finally admits the human is definitely not just some basic NPC. She defends herself saying that, thanks to her dragon heritage, causing terror in mortals has always been basically a tutorial-level task. But the maid points out that the wizard did not show a single pixel of panic, even after she popped her ultimate intimidation aura. Dead silence takes over the massive room, while the boss just listens to her loyal moderator's hyper-detailed review. Noticing the human's sweaty tryhard energy, the girl finally admits he has at least one good stat. So the maid figures the kid will totally have the guts to look the boss dead in the eyes without shaking, a trait she actually rates pretty highly. The boss repeats the words like she is deep in thought, completely hyped by the idea of a mortal player actually being able to match her energy. A super wholesome vibe hits the grand entity as she dreams about them just coexisting in a totally normal, casual way. The maid looks a bit confused by the vocabulary used and asks what the word normal even means coming from a literal nightmare boss. Then the girl just rolls her eyes looking totally bored, sarcastically agreeing that the server's definition of normal was pretty busted. Spawning back in the fortress's long hallway, the maid jump scares the kid by announcing the boss decided to actually accept the party invite. Keeping up the stiff NPC act, she escorts the kid through the massive halls, dropping that she is taking him to the guest lobby. Walking into a super premium glitch-free room, the MC realizes internally that this base is way better maintained than he guessed. Blown away by how clean it is, he asks if there are seriously no other mods running the palace besides her, and the girl nods. Giving him a massive side-eye, the maid repeats that she is the boss's one and only admin, stubbornly insisting on tagging him merely as a visitor. The kid questions the weird rank title, wanting to know why he is not getting the official VIP fiancé treatment from the server owner. Letting out a tiny sigh, Ferda realizes the girl is just a massive human hater, acting exactly like an overprotective guard dog. Dropping the polite script, he flat out asks when the server event for the wedding goes live, and finds out the countdown is set for 30 days. The roadmap for the upcoming event shows the wedding is going to be a super private lobby, hosted low-key right there in the base. Reading the room without throwing a fit, the kid just casually clicks accept on the notification. Thinking about that exact 30-day timer, the wizard starts cooking up his own strategies. Across the room, the girl crosses her arms and keeps a sniper-level glare locked on every single reply he gives. Using some basic logic, the MC quickly figures out this timer is also a hard deadline for him to pass a vibe check before the wedding. Pointing her finger right at his face like a boss, the maid warns that to team up with an entity this overpowered, he needs to grind his way up to the exact same tier. She drops the ultimate challenge, demanding the kid prove he actually has the right stats to be fully verified as her player too. Staring down all these crazy requirements, the kid thinks to himself that this whole marriage questline seems way too complicated. He asks if this patch note came straight from the boss, but the girl clarifies that she actually coded that rule herself. Thinking it is wild that a mod is setting the server rules, the kid hears that the boss is way too nice and lets too much slide, so the maid has to be the sweaty tryhard. Clenching her fists, the girl demands that even with his nerfed physical stats, he better be able to show he has some legit top-tier potential. Her biggest fear was that the rival guilds in the next zones would totally disrespect the boss if she picked an absolute scrub for a partner. The wizard closes his eyes for a second, downloading every single detail of that massive lorddom. A look of legit surprise pops up on his face as he realizes his future duo actually has a super solid support squad. Respecting the maid's hardcore loyalty, Ferda admits she is carrying by pointing out the exact blind spots her boss totally ignored. But a dark, suspicious thought creeps into the MC's brain, making him wonder why literally none of these loyal guards were around during the beast's final moments in his last playthrough. Getting back to the main chat, he hits accept on the challenge, while the girl trolls him, asking if he is planning to speedrun becoming the server admin just to avoid getting embarrassed. The guy thinks about her sarcastic comment, figuring that out-leveling a massive empire boss is definitely not a casual side quest. Even with the crazy high difficulty spike of the task, he just accepts the terms of service with a totally chill expression. Super paranoid about all that calmness, the maid asks why he is acting so relaxed when faced with such a brutal penalty. Furious over his lack of a reaction, she asks if he thinks fighting mobs is just some cozy minigame or if he is genuinely brain-dead, but gets a ridiculously chill reply. Flexing absolute confidence in his own build, the kid tells the maid not to sweat it, swearing he will drop indisputable proof of his stats within the 30-day limit. The girl just stares at the kid in silence, totally mind-blown trying to figure out where a basic human gets that kind of main character energy. Nightfall completely blankets the massive, edgy Gothic fortress, dropping a heavy, quiet, atmospheric vibe over the map. Pacing through the empty hallways, Ferda thinks about the insane grind required to flex his skills in literally just 30 days. He admits to himself that right now his mana pool is at absolute zero, since magic users are basically shiny tier rare on this server. However, the kid has the exclusive cheat code of already hitting the max level 9th circle in his past life, so he knows exactly the tech needed to get his stats back. For any player running this mystic class, crafting the first ring is the ultimate bottleneck, since it literally codes how your mana flows. The blue circle build is grinded out through super chill meditation, which is basically the safest and most popular meta for the player base. On the flip side, there is the red circle forged purely out of chaotic, unhinged rage mechanics. Instead of giving you clean buffs, this dark web route drains your sanity bar super fast, turning the user into an absolute rage-quitting berserker. Because he literally crash-landed into that dark timeline before, the Grand Wizard knows that running that same build again would power level him way faster. Clenching his fists with pure focus, he promises himself he is not going to fall for that same toxic exploit again. This time around, the MC chooses the super slow, safe grinding method, just to make absolutely sure his mental stability does not blue screen at any point. The days fly by on fast forward, and 7 full rotations pass inside the totally isolated base. Sitting on the floor of his bright room, the kid runs a deep meditation minigame trying to sync up with the local energy. Stacking the energy in his palms with crazy effort, he tries to craft the starter magic ring, but the glow just instantly despawns in the wind. Letting out a massive sigh of defeat, the wizard logs another loss in his attempt to master the base energy mechanics. He calculates that the blue circle route usually takes a whole 3 years of grinding, but he coped thinking it would be a speedrun since he already had the future strategies memorized. Interrupting his loading screen, the maid barges into the room carrying a plate and asks point-blank if he has even started prepping for the boss fight yet. The kid gives a chill nod while he starts munching on the soup she just dropped off. Enjoying the consumables, he realizes his strategy has not changed, since the only option is to keep spamming attempts with 0 breaks. Even though he is acting totally cool on the outside, he privately admits his experience bar has not moved an inch and he desperately needs a new meta. Out of nowhere, a massive lag spike shakes the entire palace, making the dishes rattle on the desk like crazy. Totally shook by the random earthquake, the kid asks what the heck is spawning such a massive glitch in the physics engine. The maid casually explains that the boss Veldrova is currently right in the middle of a massive mob wipe event at that exact second. He processes this in silence, hearing that the creature is out there soloing the corrupted zone on the east border. Hit with a sudden burst of motivation, the kid stands up and announces he wants to go spectate this raid in person. Rory glares at him with a deadpan face, dropping a cold warning that it would be highly recommended he just sit this one out. She points out that the basic mental stats of a normal player would straight up crash under the crushing pressure of that cursed warzone. Giving off a super challenging vibe, the girl suggests he just stay in his room, unless he is actually aiming to embarrass himself before the marriage cutscene even triggers. Rejecting the warning without a second thought, the wizard slaps his hand on the desk with purpose and totally vetoes the idea of hiding in the lobby. Standing on business, he doubles down that spectating this raid is the literal tutorial requirement for anyone looking to be the boss do. Finding literally 0 dialogue options to counter the kid's stubbornness, the fast travel sequence kicks off with 0 warning. The maid literally carries the kid zooming through the sky at completely broken speeds, leaving a literal vapor trail of power across the map. Touching down in the middle of the wilderness, the girl totally calmly announces they finally hit the waypoint. Furta face plants into the dirt gasping for air, complaining that the insane flight physics felt more like a glitched teleport. Feeling totally motion sick, he tries to reset his health while the girl barks at him to look forward, since she is not the main event here. The kid slowly pans his camera up, trying to render the insanely heavy graphics the mod just pointed out. His eyes instantly go wide as he is hit with the nightmare tier scale of the map completely taking over his screen. A colossal tornado of dark magic and toxic smoke completely blankets the corrupted biome in pure, unfiltered chaos. Absolutely mind-blown by the sheer scale of the boss's hitbox, he gets stun-locked right on the spot, taking heavy damage from the area of effect pressure. Staring at the massive blender of destruction from a distance, the kid asks if that is actually the zone where the Supreme Admin is throwing hands. Right in the eye of the storm, the gigantic red boss is completely swarmed by a mob of ugly glitch creatures trying to attack her from every angle. The monster pulls some insanely aggressive movement tech in the air, throwing the mobs with absolutely broken knockback damage and taking back map control by force. Colossal multi-headed raid bosses scream in pure agony as they try to tank the unfiltered rage of the original server admin. Showing exactly 0 mercy, her razor-sharp claws shred the enemy's armor sets instantly, proving without a doubt who is actually running the lobby. The red dragon straight up chomps the spawns without missing a beat, permanently deleting anything dumb enough to walk into her aggro range. Stacking an absurd amount of damage per second in her throat, the boss tilts her head back to charge up her absolute ultimate attack. A massive laser beam of pure fire drops from above, totally wiping the map with a fiery explosion that flashes out the entire dark zone. The raw power of the ultimate triggers a massive shockwave that even hits the sniper spot where the two spectators are chilling. Right after the blast, the beast drops a deafening roar that literally forces the game's physics engine to shake violently. The soundwave carries a super heavy intimidation debuff, spamming terror across every single pixel of that totally nuked map. The shockwave of that scream hits the kid square in the chest, making him fight for his life just to keep his screen from going totally black under that crazy pressure. With his stamina bar fully depleted, Ferda collapses against the dirt while his entire character model just freezes up on pure survival instinct. He instantly downloads the pure nightmare fuel encoded in that roar, and is totally shook by the busted power level the beast is packing. Looking down at the kid's pathetic state, Rory sarcastically asks if his brain finally finished rendering the brutal reality. The maid rubs in just how laughable it is for a totally squishy low-level player to actually think he can party up with a boss carrying this kind of gear. Pointing straight at the flaming disaster zone, she makes it crystal clear that this unhinged, feral beast is the true unmasked form of the user he picked to be his player too. Despite keeping up a poker face, even the maid is clenching her hands while her arms literally shake a bit from the insane server lag caused by the pressure. She defends herself saying this is exactly why she tried to drop him the patch notes early, knowing perfectly well that a human's hardware just could not run next to something like that. The code running through that boss' veins carries what the game lore calls the unstoppable toxicity of a brutal dragon. It is an aura totally driven by a hardcore hostile AI, literally incapable of moving through the map without leaving a trail of pure wreckage. The maid guarantees this base programming is never getting a patch, and the kid would end up catching stray bullets in this crossfire every single day if he stuck around. She declares that just having a tryhard attitude will not cut it, shutting the door on the idea that humans and monsters could ever actually sync up. The maid's ultimate goal is for the boss herself to realize this whole co-op dream is a total flop after seeing the kid's absolutely trash stats. But in a total plot twist, the MC lifts his sweat-drenched face looking absolutely hyped, rating the whole spectacle a straight 10 out of 10. Rura's brain completely blue screens when she realizes that instead of being stun-locked by fear, he is actually watching the raid like an absolute fan. Totally horrified by the human's lack of a survival instinct, she screams internally, flagging the kid as a total masochist weirdo. Night mode drops back over the massive, silent palace structure. Spawning back in his room, Ferda is showing heavy signs of burnout, admitting he tried to pre-buff his mental stats for the massive hit he took today. Completely out of juice, he belly flops onto the bed with his arms out, feeling every single polygon in his body screaming from the crazy overexertion. He remembers the maid having to basically carry him back, because he barely had the stamina to walk them. Closing his eyes super hard, the kid figures it was legit developer intervention that his game did not crash after tanking a shockwave of that tier. Salty about his progress, he notes that being stuck on the first ring tutorial just meant he wasted an entire 24-hour cycle. Questioning why he was such a stubborn tryhard about going to watch that lethal raid, the wizard dives back into his recent chat logs. The replay of the majestic boss holding down the combat zone hits his brain hard, locking in the absolute hype of that top-tier magic showcase. He remembers the aggro of that brawl being way too terrifying, but he still had this massive urge to keep spectating the boss. The creature masked her actual skin while totally wiping out the enemy team and suppressing the mobs at the border. She was doing all this grinding purely to firewall the things she cared about most in the game. Giving major lone wolf vibes, she was a brave red tank who totally willingly locked into a super toxic questline. Scrolling through the video of that nuked map, the MC thinks about how having that kind of unshakable willpower is just straight up peak. Because of that, he thinks it is insane that someone with that kind of god-tier clout agreed to chill with a basic free-to-play guy like him. Suddenly, a jump scare hits the kid when he feels a ping in his chest, looking down totally shook as a red ring starts rendering. Gripping his shirt tight, the wizard figures that is definitely not the mana type he ordered, since he refuses to fall for the same glitchy strategies as before and tries to cancel the cast. But the replay of the fighter in the middle of the fire zone keeps totally hijacking his memory, leaving him super confused about what is happening to his code. Staring at his own hand radiating heavy particles, Ferda notices that the more he rewatches her combat footage, the clearer his mana network gets mapped out. However, the buff flowing through him now carried a totally different vibe than the toxic salt or revenge thirst from before. Squinting his eyes to boost his focus, he dives deep into his own source code trying to download this brand new power type. In the middle of a red magic zone, the kid wonders what the official wiki name for this weird, fuzzy feeling is, which felt like it could despawn at any second. Sweating to not drop the combo, he completely locks in on this vibe, compressing and spinning the energy crazy fast between his fingers. The non-stop grind finally spawns a thick core of power, forcing a single flawless crimson magic circle to officially drop. With the spell completely stable on his hand, he promises himself that this playthrough is going to run on a completely different engine. Squeezing his hand like a boss, the kid swears there is absolutely zero chance he is letting the same cursed game over screen happen twice. The very next day, the maid straight up breaches the bedroom door and asks, looking completely shook, if he seriously managed to unlock his mana network overnight. Already wearing his gear, Ferda praises the girl's high perception stats for spotting the update so fast, while she demands to know how he pulled off a literally impossible exploit. Flexing pure confidence, the MC casually claims he only hit the clip because he is simply built different, leaving the maid looking completely done with him. Taking a deep breath, Rory admits he technically cleared the tutorial checks, but the kid points out he still has a massive skill tree to unlock. Equipping his cloak to head out, the wizard asks if there is a sandbox zone nearby where he can test his new skills without getting totally griefed. A few frames later, an open training ground packed with a ton of wooden target dummies loads right in the middle of the green landscape. Showing off the custom map, the maid announces she built the practice lobby exactly how the guest ordered. The kid claps, totally hyped by the girl's insane crafting speed, building such a stacked zone in literally half a day's grind. Confused, she asks what he is even planning to do out there using basic wooden mobs instead of premium magic gear, and gets told the goal is mastering mana control to stop leaking energy. Not computing at all, the maid asks why he even needs that, arguing that to her, practicing mana control felt as dumb as practicing how to breathe. The girl flexes that anyone with dragon genetics would consider that kind of human handicap to be straight-up unga-bunga caveman behavior. Too tired to argue the lore, Ferda takes a deep breath, accepting that a player born with a dev account will never understand the free-to-play struggle. Walking toward the target dummies, the MC drops a casual invite that if she wants to spectate this super repetitive grinding session, she is totally free to hang around. Taking his spot in the open field, he calmly raises his arm to start his very first aim training benchmark. In the Magic meta, the core mechanic of using energy demands perfect balance, which is basically the whole point of the blue ring build. But since his current mana pool runs on the red ring, the kid needs to intentionally proc his heavy emotions while somehow keeping them on a tight leash to output solid damage. Checking his cursed chat logs, the wizard remembers how he wasted an entire year just learning to siphon power out of that messy, brain-rotting energy flow. Spawning a tight orb in his hand, he recalls it took him another full 12 months just to compress that raw damage into the basic forward attack he spammed in his past run. Staring at the tiny ball of energy on his finger, the MC happily realizes the whole crafting process only took a measly 2 minutes this time. The maid watches the clip completely jaw-dropped, unable to compute that the mortal just perfectly generated a pure orb with zero lag on his very first attempt. Cranking up the difficulty slider, Ferda spawns 3 more orbs floating around him with absolute cheat code precision. Locking onto the wooden dummies lined up at the end of the range, he clicks to fire without a second thought. The red projectiles slice through the air with terrifying speed, leaving a bright tracer line that clears the distance in 1 frame. With a loud bang, the magic snipes the target's dead center, triggering a clean micro-explosion that perfectly deletes all the dummies. Hyped about the damage numbers, the kid blows the smoke off his finger and brags that it looks like he did not lose his mechanical skill after all. Way past just being impressed, the girl starts scanning the guest with serious, suspicious eyes, calculating the whole situation like a tryhard. Later on, back at the dark and quiet base, the maid drops her full admin report on everything the kid has been up to directly to the boss. Chilling in idle mode, the server owner praises the moderator's hustle and asks for her honest review of this human who speedrun his magic unlock. The maid confesses the kid pulled off some absolute hacker-level moves from frame 1, and precisely because he did not drop a single combo, he is officially a threat. In her eyes, it was mathematically impossible for a human to hit that skill bracket out of nowhere, forcing her to bet he is definitely hiding some crazy lore. Listening to her mod's paranoia, Valdrova finds it hilarious that the maid is actually validating a mortal's stats, agreeing the kid gets more interesting by the minute. Totally relaxed, the boss tells her underling to chill, saying the wizard promised he is not doing a toxic run, and she is fully ready to believe him. The girl drops her head stressing out, flashing back to all the times her VIP boss got scammed and griefed by toxic mortal players before. Going into full Overwatch mode, the maid promises herself she is going to block any future drama, hoping to find a way to data mine the fiancé's real agenda. Right then, a super spicy, high IQ strat randomly pops into the mod's head. Using the opening in the chat, Rory pitches that the boss should use this perfect timing to hand the MC a highly specific and heavy quest. The massive red entity looks a bit shook by the random suggestion, and asks what exactly the mod just cooked up for the human. A bit later, Ferda spawns in wearing a flawless premium noble skin, getting officially announced at the door of a massive, glowing lobby. The fancy room was the spawn point for the Eastern Border Alliance meetup, where the local whales were speed-clicking through the queue. Raging about the lag, one of the VIPs asks why they got pinged for a chill meeting right when a mob wave could hit, until he realizes they were there to greet the new player too. Super salty, another guy cannot believe some total clown actually clicked except on that suicide mission, roasting the poor guy as nothing but the trash-tier third son of the Resnova clan. The lobby is totally flooded with toxic voice chat, with guys trolling an 18-year-old kid trying to play shot caller, even though his stats say he could not even equip a basic sword. Leaning on the table, a chunky boomer shuts the debate down saying there is zero reason to sweat, because a weak kid like that would get permanently logged out pretty quick anyway. At the end of the day, the toxic squad of nobles all agree that the kid is just going to get instantly deleted by the beast's claws no matter what. Cutting off the trash talk, the massive double doors swing completely open for the kid to stroll down the super long red carpet. Totally ignoring the heavy aggro in the room, the MC walks in with peak confidence, with the loyal maid trailing right behind his hitbox. During the pre-game lobby for this fancy event, the kid had skimmed some patch notes, asking if he really had to duel these toxic nobles so early in the... The maid clarified that this raid was mandatory for the Alliance, testing if he actually knew the lore behind the boss' supreme title. He fully knew that back in the day, Valdrova was the only player assigned to solo the Black Dragon raid, and permanently delete that threat from the server. As the loot dropped for that legendary win, she claimed the entire eastern map, but her current main quest was literally just farming mobs at the dangerous border wall. Because of her hardcore grinding schedule, the future partner's job was to take over the entire admin panel for the zone and deal with the boring paperwork from the local mods. Thinking about the quest, Ferda figured the boss still did not trust him and was using this to check his leadership stats, so he just clicked accept without complaining. Jumping back to the present, he takes a seat super politely at the massive round table, officially introducing himself in server chat as the boss future duo. Keeping a stone-cold poker face and a super bossy mic tone, the kid immediately asks what username the old boomers want to be called from here on out. The direct call-out leaves the nobles totally muted and cornered, realizing instantly that this noob is not squishy at all, and their reply would officially lock in the guild's hierarchy. Trying to steal back the lobby host controls, the head boomer slaps on a fake smile, swearing that everyone in the zone was just chilling happily under the boss's carry. Throwing an overly extra bow, the guy claims it was just pure instinct to max out their respect for the future partner of the server owner. But the wholesome vibe gets instantly deleted from the room, flipping to a hostile warning that the mods here pledged loyalty to the server way before the kid even created his account. Keeping up the toxic banter, the old noble asks if maybe the partner himself should also equip some basic manners when talking to the VIPs in the room. Ferda holds his ground and asks if that is the guy's final answer, wanting to lock in right now if he should treat him like a VIP or just straight up trash him. With a completely ice-cold death stare, the MC orders the boomer to answer the prompt with zero filter. Feeling the heavy pressure, the old man swallows his pride and admits it is totally fine for the boss's partner to talk down to them, getting a smug confirmation from the kid. Spinning his chair to the table, the wizard announces he is not planning on dropping any major server patches, and they can keep running their zones, whether they play smart or just completely grief their own economy. A chunky noble with long hair slams his fists on the desk raging, totally tilted that the kid implied they were scamming their own player base. Acting super innocent, the kid puts his hands up and says my bad for the toxic chat, claiming it was just a typo with zero malice intended. But the MC's sharp glare totally leaks his real agenda, as he points out he finally understands exactly why that guy got kicked from his own clan. Completely furious, the Lord accuses the kid of trying to main the wizard class after getting banned from his house, and demands respect by flexing that he is a tier 4 Mage. With his face halfway covered in some edgy shadow lighting, Ferda drops a little smirk and sarcastically rates the guy's power level as almost decent. The noble's eyeball is literally twitching from pure salt, totally unable to process the absolute disrespect he just heard. As a tier 4 player, he was used to getting the VIP premium treatment literally everywhere, treating this trash talk like an instant ban offense. Glowing with a heavy magic aura on his hands, the guy screams that a basic tutorial wizard should never talk down to him and promises to teach him some manners via player versus player combat. Totally unbothered by the raging, the kid raises a hand super chill and says he has a weirdly fun idea to settle the beef. He then drops a one-on-one challenge right on the noble, claiming a duel is the absolute best way to check the actual stats of a basic Tier 1 wizard. The whole lobby instantly fast travels to a massive outdoor arena, setting up the map for this totally unhinged duel between two different magic tiers. Up in the stands, the other nobles are whispering that the match is already totally rigged, and watching the kid get sent to the gulag will make it way easier to hijack the server. The maid Ruri watches the whole cutscene quietly with a serious face, while listening to the guys ask if the noble was going to nerf his damage for the fight. Dead center in the arena, the two players lock eyes under the sun, waiting for the exact frame to pop their skills. Dripping with pure chill energy, Ferda takes the mic first and casually asks what kind of ultimate the enemy is planning to drop on him. The noble crosses his arms feeling super insulted, muttering that asking someone to leak their best build before the round even starts is terrible gamer etiquette. Flashing a toxic, cocky grin, the guy assumes the kid is already sweating and offers him the chance to hit the concede button right now. Not wasting any frames, the Lord summons a shield of energy around his hitbox and vainly announces he is going to cast an advanced area of effect nuke. The crowd instantly starts sweating, knowing that specific skill was coded entirely for pure one-shot potential, and highly doubting the kid makes it out with any health points. Hearing the spell pick, the MC decides to be a good sport and admits the only move he actually has equipped right now is a basic mana project. The opponent literally bursts out laughing, thinking it is pure comedy that the kid thinks he can secure a win by spamming the most basic starter spell in the game. Adjusting his posture, the mage guarantees he has zero plans to take a loss in this match, considering his downloaded skill tree is massive. Totally consumed by the salt, the noble curses the kid's ego and funnels his entire mana bar into his hands to fire. A massive magic circle renders on the floor around the guy, while he screams he is going to completely wipe the kid's character data without a trace. Scanning the enemy's cast time, Ferda detects some serious lethal intent, and figures the guy is also running the unstable red circle. Tossing tiny red particles into the air, the MC fake cries over the rival's pathetic damage output with a completely deadpan face. The noble's eyes pop open in pure confusion, totally unable to track the insane frame data and smoothness of the kid casting his spell. Holding a crazy complex and flawless magic build in just one hand, Ferda coldly announces that this match is already over. The skill shot dashes across the map like a laser, forcing the panicked guy to spam a shield spell just trying to block the damage. But the red beam literally just phases right through the guy's hitbox, leaving him totally lost about what the heck just registered. The critical hit lands right behind him, making the enemy realize in pure panic that the target was not his body, but his actual spell engine. Shattering the magic core like it was cheap glass, the kid manages to totally interrupt the enemy's nuke before the cast bar even finished. The backlash of the cancel drops the noble to his knees in the dirt, making him freak out wondering if those were actually the stats of a starter class. Staring into the void, the guy admits, totally defeated, that a skill specifically coded just to break magic circles was in a tier completely out of his league. The Lord's hands aggressively slap the arena floor, showing the crushing reality of getting totally rolled in a speedrun. Completely slumped in the middle of the ring, all his toxic ego from earlier vanishes, making way for a total rage quit against the kid's overpowered stats. Sweating bullets and gasping for air, the guy takes the massive loss, realizing he just got completely styled on. Walking super chill up to the down player, the MC stops right in front of him and asks point-blank if he is finally pressing surrender. The rival looks up still totally stunned, unable to type a single comeback against the young wizard's undeniable carry. But instead of raging, the guy's face lights up like a massive fanboy, quietly admitting his only goal is to just grind higher levels. Tossing his ego completely in the trash, the noble bows his head to the floor, accepting the defeat and swearing he would do literally any quest to unlock that kind of power. Up in the VIP seats, the nobles are totally mind-blown, with one even accusing the maid of using admin commands to rig the fight, earning a hardcore threat that she would rip his eyes out if he kept whining. Acting like a good sport, Ferda holds out a hand to help his opponent up, praising his raw damage and admitting the match could have been sketchy if the guy just had better ping. The guy lets out a totally genuine laugh and thanks him for the good game, claiming that getting demoted from the capital server to the border zone was not actually that bad of a drop. The kid's face instantly changes textures, asking the noble to repeat that lore drop about the capital and demanding to see his full player card. Hearing the guy's username was Thessalos Walcher, the MC mutters it under his breath, loading a hyper-specific memory file from his previous. With his face covered in some terrifying dark lighting, the wizard coldly states that he completely remembers him now, sarcastically labeling him as his absolute savior. The noble gets completely confused by the random dialogue switch and tries to ask what server they played on before, but the kid points a finger dead center at his forehead with zero warning. Pulling off a totally ruthless move, Ferda pops his ultimate point blank, dropping an obliterating red explosion straight to the enemy's dome. The heavy critical hit connects instantly, permanently ending the noble's playthrough in the most brutal and instant way possible. Pure terror hijacks the lobby, as the VIPs literally scream in panic watching a totally unbannable offense go down right in front of their eyes. The guy's logged-out body faceplants hard into the dirt, marking the permanent game over of a match that actually looked like it was ending on good terms. Keeping an absolutely ice-cold glare, the MC announces in game chat that he deleted the enemy specifically because, in a future patch, that guy was going to cause massive emotional damage to his fiancée. A super cursed silence takes over the combat zone while the wind hits the terrified faces of the nobles, who are now staring at the new server boss with actual nightmare fuel fear. Dropped on the floor with zero counterplay, the endgame for the guy who dared to mess with the boss' peaceful run was decided with absolutely zero chill. The leaked info that a premium VIP was just permanently banned spreads like a virus among the lords, who are literally shaking at the kid's hardcore moderation. Whispering in pure panic, the boomers point out the duel was already over, and deleting a downed player like that was a massive, toxic violation of server rules. But the wizard's sharp glare across the map left a totally obvious threat hovering in the air, basically daring anyone to try and dispute his banhammer. Casually strolling up to the frozen nobles, the MC sarcastically asks why everyone looks like they just saw a jump scare. He tells the boomers to just ignore the dropped loot on the floor, swearing that if he let that guy keep playing, he would 100% crash the boss' whole game, leaving the assembly leader totally stunned. Stuttering from the stress, the old man points out this is literally the kid's first time loading into the East map and meeting the guy, making it impossible to compute how he could ever debuff the Grand Beast. The MC quietly pulls up the memory of his partner's wholesome code, remembering her ultimate endgame was just to act as the server's shield and keep human players safe. Walking toward the exit, he keeps the toxic grudge to himself, knowing the beast sacrificed her whole run to carry these guys, and the deleted noble was one of the griefers who ruined everything. The old lord tries to argue that the whole excuse sounds like total cap, while the kid just figures that trying to explain a leaked spoiler from a timeline that has not happened yet would be a massive waste of time. Catching the wizard's death stare, the boomer completely panics, assuming he just wiped a VIP over some fake lore and tags him as a total psycho, but the kid just hits him with a did not ask, do not care. Leaving that whole toxic lobby behind, the fast travel sequence back to the monster's base kicks off, with the ride bouncing like crazy over the busted dirt map. Now safely inside the private carriage, the kid drops the whole edgy act, curling up on the seat groaning in pain, while the loyal maid just watches quietly. Holding his own head, the wizard suffers from his absolute zero stamina bar, whining that the whole screen will not stop spinning. Reviewing the video of running into the griefer right at spawn, he privately admits that one single snipe completely drained his entire mana pool all at once. Getting tossed around by the terrible road physics and running on fumes, the MC sighs heavily and cries about how much he misses magic car switch have not even been patched into this era yet. Breaking the awkward silence, the maid sarcastically slow claps and roasts the kid like a cartoon, pointing out that spawn camping the most submissive noble in the zone on day one is definitely going to lag the wedding event. Ferda just looks at the girl calmly and asks if she is actually talking about Thessalos since, despite the fake vibes, that noble was basically one of the boss's most top-tier support mains. Completely drained, the mage agrees the whole mess is going to cause a massive headache, but then he recalls the guy's fake polite act and wonders if he was ever actually a high-tier player. The MC then explains that the deleted rival was actually the perfect mid-tier moderator for that chaotic server, since the rest of the admins just wanted to loot everything, so having a slightly corrupted noble was honestly the best-case scenario. Even with this massive roadblock, he swears the wedding prep is going to keep running on schedule, because he is 100% confident his lore reasons for banning the guy are totally solid. Tanking the heavy physical debuffs, he holds his head just trying to survive the motion blur of the ride. Right then he spots a cloth loot bag strapped to the seat and tries to pull up some super rare files from his previous playthrough. With the sunset graphics hitting the window, the kid realizes the noble was probably already running illegal scripts without anyone noticing. The second they hit the massive base of the Walter clan, the old NPC butler bows to greet the VIP players. Cutting the intro cutscene, Ferda flat out announces that the server owner will not be taking visitors because his health points just hit zero, leaving the NPC totally stun-locked. Next, he hands that exact same mystery loot bag over to the old man, acting like it is just some basic common drop. Showing absolutely zero empathy, The wizard orders that the item needs to be pinned right on the front gate where everyone can see it, making the NPC glitch out trying to process the command. Peeling back the cloth, the employee goes into absolute panic mode when he recognizes the cursed item and starts crying for his admin. The NPC's massive scream of agony echoes through the base, while the night cycle takes over the map. Now chilling in the dead noble's premium bedroom, Rory crosses her arms and says they literally look like griefers looting an empty base. The maid watches the kid digging around under the bed and warns him he better find some solid chat logs to justify this raid, complaining that she got forced to carry the cursed loot back. Crawling out from under the furniture, the MC trolls her asking if he should just cancel the mission and take the bag back, but then drops that he already found the objective. He then points out while scanning the wooden floor textures that the noble had a totally hidden trapdoor clipped right there. To unlock the secret area, the kid tells the girl to back up a few steps. With absolutely zero patience for lockpicking minigames, the maid just clenches her fist and drops a ridiculously overpowered punch straight into the floorboards. The massive critical hit totally shatters the entire room's floor mesh, creating a giant hole using pure brute force. Totally chill with the map destruction, Ferda notes that the path is clear and invites the girl to jump down, while she just blows the dust off her knuckles. The duo starts dropping down a super long, creepy stone staircase that leads right into the base's dungeon. Pinching his nose because of the toxic smell, the kid notices the entire zone reeks of old, gross health potions. The graphics in the dungeon reveal a pure nightmare laboratory focused on hacking player codes and modding character models. Digging through his files, he pulls up the lore about a hardcore toxic guild called the Dark Lord's Cult. These tryhards were literally users who deleted their own humanity stats to farm banned magic, proving the dead admin was running illegal necromancer scripts. Inspecting an NPC locked up in iron chains, the MC gets super disgusted seeing the poor guy got horribly modded using random monster assets. Consumed by quiet rage, Rory stares at the cursed setup and says the psycho noble was basically begging to get permabanned. Super salty, the maid figures human players are straight up untrustworthy, claiming that just joining that toxic cult was enough lore reason to justify the guy's execution. Ignoring the girl's rant, Ferda loots a pile of documents on the desk, making the maid ask how he even got the coordinates for this secret base. Hiding his face in the dark lighting of the basement, the kid just whispers that he finally found the exact quest item he needed. The saved file was the traitor's ultimate passion project, dropping the exact code for a banned exploit to generate infinite mana. Looking back at his old save, the MC remembers the noble figured out that monsters passively generated magic energy on a loop. The only nerf to this exploit was that the raw magic spawned as a totally corrupted, toxic element that human players could not equip. But the necromancer did not log off, cooking up the absolute madman strat of trying to copy-paste this infinite mana engine right into a human hitbox. If the random number generation was in his favor, the player would unlock the ability to spam pure magic with zero cooldowns. This broken hack would literally delete the level caps of the normal magic rings, handing the noble absolutely unbannable admin power. The traitor's endgame goal was to spam this infinite mana to summon a zombie raid, and totally wipe the guild of nobles that kicked him to this starter zone. Right then, the wizard loads up the exact frame from his previous run, where he violently hijacked these same files from that disgusting player. During that edgy phase, the MC grabbed the lore docs claiming they would be the perfect buff to finish his revenge quest, permanently deleting the nerd right after. Snapping back to the current lobby, the kid flips through the notebook and laughs at the game's random number generation for dropping the exact same patch notes that carried him to the 8th circle right into his hands again. He is 100% sure that equipping these files would power level his god-tier stats way faster than last time, but he hesitates on clicking accept. Staring at his AFK face, the maid points out that this kind of loot goblin energy proves he is just another greedy player, dropping the fact that literally nobody would care if he just looted the files for himself. Putting on a sarcastic voice chat, the girl says good game on the drop, hyping it up as the exact premium loot any human would sell their soul to farm. Trying to read the kid's dialogue options, she says there will not be any admin bans for keeping the data, but gets instantly interrupted by a hard no. Without even blinking, the kid hands the god-tier item over to the maid and drops the command that every single pixel in that dungeon needs to be permanently deleted. Rory grabs the item looking totally tilted and asks if his brain lagged out, thinking it is a massive throw for a wizard to reject such a broken experience farm. Acting totally zen, Ferda agrees the files absolutely have the power to completely break the magic meta, but says he just does not see any value adding that to his current build. Instead of falling for the bait of that edgy dark magic and risking dropping his duo's happiness meter, he decides that wiping out the virus right at the source code is the meta strat. Looking straight at the girl, he politely asks if she could do him a solid and just burn the whole place with fire. Still buffering over the human's totally based decision, the maid looks down and replies that running that command will not be a problem at all. Instantly, crazy strong blue flames spawn right from the girl's hands, completely taking over the secret files. In a matter of frames, a massive firestorm wipes the entire basement map, scrubbing the dark zone and totally deleting every trace of the noble's griefing. Staring at the blue fire animation, the MC thinks about how every spell copies the vibe of its coder, and since the traitor was basically running on pure salt, his hack would easily corrupt anyone else's save file. He totally remembers that the noble was also running the unstable red build, sharing the exact same toxic rage mechanics that almost bricked the wizard's own run back in the day. If he clicked install on that malware, he would end up getting hacked by the same chaotic bugs he swore to never equip again. Letting the heavy baggage from his previous playthrough burn up in that firebox, the kid drops a massive sigh of relief and closes his eyes. Putting a hand on his chest feeling totally zen, he loudly claims that the fire animation is rendering flawlessly. Watching the cutscene quietly, the maid thinks his dialogue options are super weird, tagging him as a total wildcard, but starts noticing something else behind his suspicious aura. Letting out a long breath, the maid turns away from the nuked map and pitches that they finally log out of this claustrophobic basement. Walking right next to him, the girl drops a pro tip that it would be a massive grief to the server's vibe if he showed up smelling like a player versus player zone to the highly anticipated wedding event that is about to drop.